This program is brought to you by Ignite TV. Now you're in command. Visit Rogers.com for more details.
Welcome to Voices of Grey. This is Season 2. I'm Petal Furness. I'm the manager here at Grey Roots Museum and Archives, and we're in our beautiful 1920s schoolhouse, and we have an exciting lineup of people to talk to. Before we get started with today's special guest, I would like to recognize and thank Mark Perry, who is filming right now, who is the producer at Rogers TV, and we'd like to thank them for covering local content, which is so important. We'd also like to give a shout out to Katrina Paradin. She's our communications person here and who's helping behind the scenes. And today's special guest is someone that I would refer to as a friend. We've done a lot of work together over the years. Almost everyone in Grey County knows him because almost everyone listens to the radio. And it's our fabulous, famous Ross Kentner.
Thank you so much, Petal.
You're welcome, and welcome to the program.
Thank you. I've admired this show and thought, boy, wouldn't it be nice to be on that sometime?
Oh, really? Well, it's just, I didn't realize that, I guess I'm not a relative newcomer anymore because I've been here now 20 years, but working at the museum for 15. So initially getting involved when we were doing the advertising and bringing my children in when we first started doing the PA Day advertisements, and then together working on 70 years of radio. Yes,
so appreciate your efforts on that. That was a fabulous thing.
That was fabulous. And then updating it and having 75 years of radio, but all the events that went with it and the book launch and having all of the former employees come through the building, it was amazing.
Next year is the 80th.
Is it already?
Where do the years go?
Oh my goodness. Well, that was a fabulous adventure working on that and learning. I learned so much history from working together. And then your ongoing commitment to Grey Roots and being an adjudicator at a regional heritage fair, which
always
really
fun.
Means so much. And then all the work that you've done for culture and heritage, in addition to everything you're doing at the radio with Georgian Bay Explorer. That's your famous voice. That's how everyone's going to be. If they're not paying attention and the TV is on and they hear your voice, they're going to come running.
You know, it's not on the air anymore.
I know, because you're not there.
But we're working behind the scenes to try and ensure that it's preserved. That's the important thing.
Well, I know at one point we talked about getting copies of those programs and having them in Voices of Grey. So if we could continue doing that and save it as a resource for the people of Grey County, I think it would be
I'd hate to see it lost, that's for sure. You know, over the years, I probably recorded 10,000 scripts.
That's one of my questions. How many scripts do you think you...
Well, I remember while I was still working with Andrew, he talked about there being 10,000 scripts. But, I mean, the program evolved over time. We expanded the network of Bayshore stations.
Great.
And with it, we always, at our CRTC hearings, always promised an Explorer feature. So there ended up being a Georgian Bay Explorer, an Ottawasaga Explorer, a Lake Huron Explorer, a Twin Lakes Explorer, you know, it's a huge repertoire of stories about the beginnings here, and I know the Public Library in Owen Sound is also working on trying to just make sure that we do not lose those scripts. In the latter years, they were recorded digitally, so they're easy to preserve, but they're also easily lost. You know, just the press of a delete button, and so it really concerns me, and I think that I know that. You know, I'm sure the people at the radio station will cooperate, and if Grey Roots or the Owen Sound Library can get involved, then we could really ensure that this history isn't lost.
Or work together. We are so much stronger when cultural organizations work together. I know it was just absolutely magical when Fred Wallace was able to do a lot of interviews that we included in the exhibit, and we have all of those. And we also tried to get Fred to come on our program too, because sports is another force that draws people together.
He is a walking, you know, memory stick.
I know, it's true, and he's so lovely. But this was a bad time for him, so hopefully we can catch him in the spring.
I hope so too.
But before we get into more of this, is my personal and work, and your wife is so lovely too. So there's been so many different events we've gone to.
She is was known as Mrs. Bayshore, and I can tell you, I could not have had the career I had or accomplished the things that we did without her support. And it was, and of course, my life would be nothing without her.
Oh gosh!
Well, I'm sure everybody feels that way about their wife.
Oh, I don't think so.
Well, I do.
But it's true. All the work we do when we're able to do extraordinary work, it's because of the support of the people who love us.
You don't do it alone. And I must say, too, like I've always had just, tremendous teams at Bayshore.
Yes.
They were excellent, excellent.
So how did your wife feel when, after you've left your radio career, after being there all those years, you decided to run for politics and you're elected?
She grieved the job as much as I did, you know what I mean, at Bayshore. But 56 years is one heck of a run. And I really thought that I wasn't ready. But the transition into local politics has been very smooth, and I'm really enjoying it very much. In my early days in radio, I covered I went to every meeting of Meaford Council, Thornbury Council, Owen Sound Council. I covered Graham Bruce County Councils over the years, many years. And and the interesting thing is, I thought I knew all there was to know about it, but once you get into it, it's a little bit different than I thought. True. I was quite surprised. So
you weren't born in Grey County, were you?
No. So my story begins in East End, Toronto.
East End.
In 1941. And I was raised in Toronto, and I came to Meaford on Thanksgiving weekend in 1956. And I tell you that I count that as my own personal exodus. Led into a land flowing with milk and honey, and giving me everything I could ever ask for of life. This area, I'm a great missionary for this area, and why wouldn't I be? Because it has been so good to me.
So how did you come up here? Did you?
Well, it was an interesting thing. My dad was a man of little education, but many, many skills, and he had in the last years in Toronto, he was in insurance and real estate and a number of things, but the economy went for a kind of a dip about the mid-50s, and Dad had always been a barber by trade, and he decided he would go back to barbering, and he also, I think, wanted at that time to take his family out of Toronto and into more of a small town environment, and as I say, it was the best thing in the world for my young brother and I. And I have an older brother too, but he was already in radio at that time.
Oh, so you were following...
I sort of followed my older brother's footsteps into radio, that's true.
All right, so how is it, you just saw your brother in radio and decided...
Yes, he went to work at CFCO in Chatham. And so on our first visit there, I got a little tour of the radio station, and it was on the second floor of a hotel, and it was just a few rooms, and it was, the ancient of days equipment, but you know what, I just saw what he was doing, and I said, that's for me, and then when after we moved to Meaford, he came to Owen Sound, or about the same time. He was married and came to Owen Sound. And when I saw the layout at CFOS and what was going on there, I just knew that was what I wanted to do. And a very funny thing, we had a teacher in grade 13 who did what all good teachers should do, and that is she would get everybody up to read from time to time. And I was, brought to my feet one day to read something, and of course, I sort of played my way through high school, and I did not do much serious. And so I was just making a complete and utter fool of myself, reading a passage out loud that I'd never seen before. And then the teacher, Miss Hinchliffe, who was pretty well known throughout Ontario, actually, she said, Ross is going to be a radio announcer. And of course, I just wanted the floor to, swallow me at that point. And everybody laughed. And so then I took what money I'd saved up and I bought a tape recorder and I started practicing reading. And actually, my grades improved quite substantially. Wow. in the remainder of the time I was in high school, yes.
So did she live to see you become a radio announcer?
I'm not sure that she did, but I remember seeing her written up. She had come from from Hamilton, and I remember seeing her written up by one of the columnists in the Toronto Star. And obviously, this was a woman who had a very minuscule, lady. But I think she influenced a lot of people for the good, and she certainly had a good influence on me. And I want to make this point, if I can take control of the conversation. When I say everything it was better in Meaford, I had been attending at that time R.H. King Collegiate, the old Scarborough Collegiate in Toronto, maybe 2,500 students. So I wound up in a school with 250 kids. And about the first thing that happened, second or third day, I'm putting on my jacket, and the homeroom teacher says, "Where are you going?" I said, "I'm going home, aren't I?" And she said, "No, you're coming with me." And she took me home to her kitchen table and started to drill me on math. And like the individual attention that we got from the teachers, the dedication of the teachers in a school like Meaford District High School at the time was just phenomenal. And I'm going to tell you about another thing that was very, very influential for me. The one thing that I had enjoyed in Toronto was instrumental music, and they didn't have it in the high school here, but we did have a town band.
Yes.
And I'm going to tell you that was the most important thing to me. It was like boys to men. It was, I thought we were being taught music, but in hindsight, we were being taught manners and manhood. And the bandmaster, Jim Irvin, and the senior members of the band, the way they helped us kids grow up was just awesome. It was just a marvelous experience. And those days, the late 50s and 60s, early 60s in Meaford were so different from today, like strawberry socials, decoration day at the cemetery. I can tell you that a lot of the time I spend as a counselor now is trying to get our cemetery taken care of in a better manner. And to think we would march up the hill from the town hall, march up the hill all the way to the cemetery. There would be hymn singing, there would be, and everybody would visit the newly decorated graves, There was just a sense of community that was so valuable and had such an impression on me. As I said, my whole perspective on life changed after coming to Meaford.
So is that where you met your lovely wife?
Yes.
Is she a Meaford girl?
Yes. We met in high school, and we
So were you smitten, or was she smitten?
Oh, I have to admit,
smitten?
No, I was smitten, and my. We've had 53 years together.
Oh, my goodness, congratulations.
And all in the same house.
You're kidding.
We've added on twice.
Wow.
And we very smartly, it was just a range bungalow, and we've added on twice, and we've kept it all on one floor, so that it's a house that we can grow old into, and I guess we're starting to grow old, that's for sure.
Well, that's absolutely amazing to spend all that time in the same place and expand, and 50 years. What day was it?
August 6th.
August the 6th. Lovely.
1966.
Well, I've met your wife, and she is lovely.
Isn't she awesome?
And wonderful, and always looks as good as you do. So I must say, you're right up there with one of the top 5 people. Whenever I see you, you look like $1 million, like you've got a dresser.
Well, you know what? I just feel it's very important, and I enjoy wearing a shirt and tie and suit coat to council, because I like to show respect to the ratepayers. They put me there to represent them, and I feel they deserve good representation, and that's what we're trying to do.
Well, you always look so wonderful.
Thank you, thank you.
We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we'll be talking to Ross about more things.
Jacques, it's never been done before.
Mr. Blake.
You can't see down with that thing.
Mr. Blake.
Jacques, what?
They're coming.
Hold him up. Find something. Jacques, I'm telling you for the last time.
Are the Canadians finished? His plan coming back on the ice. Come on, give us something, will you? Please, How many stitches? Gentlemen, please.
Come on.
Hey, Tony, that's something to say to the people in the
On November 1st, 1959, Jacques Plante of the Montreal Canadiens broke with tradition.
You're a brave man, Mr. Plant, standing up to him like that.
And changed the face of hockey forever.
Hi, I'm Carol Merton. I'm the host of HealthLink. HealthLink connects home, community, and healthcare. Please join me for HealthLink on Rogers TV.
What kind of show do you want to see on Rogers TV? What interests you? Log on to rogerstv.com, fill out a show proposal, and tell us about your segment idea. We want to know what you want to see. Rogers TV, only on Rogers.
Back to Voices of Grey, Season 2. We're in the schoolhouse here in Morstan Village at Grey Roots Museum and Archives, and our guest today is Ross Kentner. And we've been talking a little bit about how you came to Grey County, some of the things you've done, 53 years, 53 years being married, 50, yes. That's all I think of. And then 56 years at the radio. I have 2 pages of all of the boards you've been on, and chair of Community Foundation, and the role you played helping save the Marine and Rail Museum. I think it was really your voice that was the tipping point for helping save it. There were many others.
Let me just say this. I've always said this about radio. Radio puts you in the right place at the right time with all the right tools to benefit your community. That's all I did. I saw the problem. I saw that it was going downhill fast.
Yes.
And here I've been charged with giving a speech to the Historical Society, and I had a whole year to plan it, and I just thought, it's crazy not to devote this speech to saving the museum. And Richard Thomas was in the audience, and other movers and shakers, and it just took off, and I'm just so thrilled with the results of that. Well, I'm very, very proud of that for sure, but it wasn't just me.
I know. But I do believe you were the catalyst. I do believe there's a certain amount of bravery you have to have when you're talking about these things. And I think that's what gave everyone strength to do it.
So let me, something I wanted to share with you today, and I think this is a good point.
Okay,
you talk about bravery. I want to talk about a tipping point in the development of our area here. And I think that tipping point, and this is one of the things that sort of drove me toward municipal affairs, was the fact that 2 people that I credit with taking us over that tipping point was Mayor Robert Rutherford and Alderman Bob Gallen.
Oh.
2 people. Now that I'm trying to think what years we're talking about here, and if I were Fred Wallace, I'd tell you it was exactly this year. But I'm not. My brain doesn't work that way. But I just remember this. That if you look back, it was, and you'll love this. This was the Saints and Sinners dialogue. This was the thing. Are we going to be wet? Are we going to stay dry?
Correct.
And that issue, as you know, went on for years and years and years. But here's the thing. And everybody, myself included, thought, well, clearly, if we have local option and we voted in, you're going to be going to church on Sunday morning, and you got to dodge the drunks rolling down the sidewalk toward you,
Right.
And so that was, what held people back, I think, that image. And what happened, actually, after the vote was just an investment of millions of dollars into the local economy on the hospitality industry. And we started to have fine dining, which we didn't have before. We always had family restaurants, but we didn't have any fine dining. We started to get hotels, modern new hotels, convention hotels, things that we didn't have before. And a lot of good things. And the culmination in my mind, and here again, those 2 politicians, the Harry Lumley Bayshore Community Center. That was fought and opposed tooth and nail by so many people. And you look back today and say, where would Owen Sound be without this facility? And where would this community be if we didn't have the Owen Sound attack?
That's right.
And when you tune in to Fred in the morning and you hear an actuality of a former attacker scoring a critical goal in the NHL.
Right.
Every morning, you know, you could live in London or live in Kingston or live in Guelph, and you don't get that same, you know, satisfaction that we're getting from, because we've got a fantastic team here, and we've got a fantastic facility, and so many other good things have flowed just like that. So to me, that was the tipping point. We went from a 40s and 50s mentality into a 20th century, or 21st century mentality. And I mean, it hasn't stopped. Bob Rutherford, he also played a critical role in developing the east side, you know, the annexation of part of Sydenham for all the development that you see as you come into Owen Sound. I'm not saying that, you know, box stores are better than downtowns, because that's not true. You know, we like heritage, and we like, but all I'm saying is those brave decisions that those politicians, local politicians, made in those few critical years changed the face of Owen Sound, and I think for the better, you know, because the economy is much more successful.
Much more robust. Yeah. We were talking yesterday with Serena Myers, who is the Economic Development Manager for the County of Grey, and she's from Hanover, so she's been in her position for 3 years. Younger people, and then people like me who are older but have only been here for 20 years, I only know this much history, and then I seem to know a lot previous to the 1920s, but I'm more unaware of some of these things you see when you've been here a long time. And I think it's important to remember those decisions, and important to remember the people who made those decisions.
There were lots of good politicians in between. I'm not faulting anybody, you know, but I just remember the success that came from pushing that vote through, and it was very, very difficult. And you know, it was so amusing too, because the only two real advertising media at the time were the Sun-Times and CFOS, and the pressure on us at CFOS to toe the line and not show favoritism to either side of this great debate, and to you know, avoid an error that would, you know, be disastrous.
Right.
It was always very interesting.
Well, and every decade or every year there brings a new challenge. So I thought it was interesting. The Prime Minister was in town last week. I didn't know he's coming, obviously. I'm not well connected. But one of the things he wanted to talk about was broadband, and why there's so many people in the area that are business people, that are starting businesses, and why it's important to have it. Whereas that wouldn't have been on our radar. For me, I don't even think 5 years ago I wouldn't have thought of it.
Well, it's been a problem for 5 years, you know, because you can do business from anywhere in the world now if you have, you know, broadband. But and for some reason, this project, I mean, I've been hearing about it for 5 years, and there's not a lot of headway yet, as far as I'm concerned. And I know that the Owen Sound Chamber, their advocacy committee, is pushing this very hard, because it's very, very critical, and we have to get there. But no, I think too at the moment Grey County is taking some great initiatives in a lot of ways. Yeah, and you know, if you don't have to go back that far either, to the initiative of creating Morston and you know, Grey Roots. That was a huge vision. You know, that it is vision at the end of the day, that, you know, you need people who can, you know, conceive how the future could change. And
I do see the role that elected officials have in this. So our first season, one of our first people we interviewed was Delton Becker, because he was an elected official, and he had a vision, and he kept working it, and he worked the room, as you would say, talking to other folks and having them going. And there were lots of other good initiatives on the table at the same time.
There were a lot of naysayers about, you mean you're going to try and move this village from Owen Sound to, you know, Rockford? And but no, that's an example of the kind of vision that Bob Rutherford had. I wish I could say that I have a vision, you know, for Meaford's future and so on, but I think it's going to be a little bit of actually our biggest problem is going to be to properly manage the amazing growth we're going to see. You know, see, we started, I'm going to go back to my childhood now. Mom and Dad bought a little piece of Georgian Bay, a little, you know, spot on the sand at Wendake Beach many years ago. And I remember the first year he put put a driveway in, and the next year he put a foundation in, just one row, like a concrete foundation, a row of cement blocks, and he ordered up a whole bunch of cedar rails to be sawed at 12-inch centers, and they were then the blocks to build the cottage. And that cottage was just heaven on earth until we went to Meaford, and eventually they sold the cottage because we didn't need it. We were right on the water in Meaford, and we were, but at that time, when you got north of the Danforth, you were in the country. North of the Danforth put you in farmers' fields. Now, can you imagine that?
No.
You've probably got to drive 40 or 50 miles, beyond that to get to the country. That you cannot stop that march toward Georgian Bay. And so our problem in Meaford is not, are we going to develop? It's just, are we going to develop in a more careful way than they have in Collingwood and so forth.
Right.
And I think that's going to be very critical for us. But I see a great future for Meaford. But I think a lot of it's really important to preserve the great things of the past, and those values. They'll help us.
Well, and it's good to look at other areas that have developed, and you can take the good and the bad from that and learn a little bit more.
For sure.
So do you feel like the people, is it coming from the east, or is it coming from the south, development for Meaford? Do you think
I think it's just that march northward, so all across the GTA, people are going to come north. One of the things I'm noticing is that we are being discovered now, like the many immigrants who settled in the GTA, the first generation, they just minded the store and took care of business, and paid the bills and got the house paid for, but 2-3 generations. Now we're seeing all kinds of families coming into the area who know nothing about this area, and they're loving it, you know what I mean? But we have to be much more receptive to them, I think. When I look at our tourism materials in Meaford, and you don't see those people, you just see us.
Right.
And we have to change that. We've got to reflect, because Grey County is pretty homogenous. I really think that Simcoe County has worked very hard over the last 10 years to be ready for the influx of the diversity that is happening in Canada's population. And I'm a great proponent. I don't want to expand this beyond its scope, but I think that Canada needs to keep adding to its population, because if we are going to be able to defend ourselves in the world of nations, we need a more critical mass. We need more people, and we need more of them occupying our north and developing it, because otherwise that will be taken from us by people on the other side of the planet who will be coming over and dipping in.
Almost every elected official we've talked to, everyone is amazing, because it takes a special person to put themselves out there to try to make a difference, and everyone has an opinion whether or not you're doing a good job or a poor job, or they don't agree with everything. I think that probably the most important thing you said was the fact that once you're in it, you really understand a lot more than when you're just observing. Well, I am so happy that you're elected to council. I'm so happy you're still so active in the community. Certainly Grey County, if we look at our famous alumni, you're right up there, Ross. And I look forward to all the great things you're going to yet do, and it's so wonderful knowing that you're a friend of Grey Roots.
Always.
All right, thank you. And that concludes this session of Voices of Grey. Thank you so much.
Call the Rogers TV viewer response line, email us, or connect with us on social media.
Attack action on Rogers TV.
For 25 years, you've been helping to make our roads safer by doing the right thing. You've been the designated driver. You've stayed over